The quarterback competition is heating up as Ole Miss hosts its first open scrimmage of the spring. We'll tell you how that is going on. We had John Gillespie stop by as well. Anyway, this is the Locked On Ole Miss Podcast.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Ole Miss Podcast. I am your host, Stephen Willis. Thank you very much for joining us, and I hope everybody has a Monday that is unforgettable and starts off a great week. National championship game tonight. Anyway, thank you again for making the Locked On Ole Miss Podcast your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast, including YouTube. If you could subscribe there, we would appreciate it. Anyway, the quarterback competition is heating up at Ole Miss, and it may not be the direction you think it is. Now, Jaxson Dart right now is the unabashed leader. Anybody that you ask about this, Jaxson Dart is the guy that is in the front. Jaxson Dart is acting like he's the starter. Jaxson Dart is making important plays that you want him to make. We talked to Dalen Flowers yesterday about this. We're going to hear from John Gillespie on this as well in the third segment. But Jaxson Dart has done everything that we have hoped he would do. Whenever we were talking about this in February, after the transfer portal quarterbacks came in of Walker Howard and Spencer Sanders, and the national flyover media was all like, well, Spencer Sanders is going to be the guy. Well, we got to the point where that rang a certain chord in Jaxson Dart's head, and he came out ready to go. Ready to play. He's making all the decisions. He's acting exactly like we hoped he would, and as honestly as if there's no competition whatsoever. He just views it as a normal quarterback room. And because of that, I think he's a little bit more relaxed. I think last year he was pressing so much because he had just gotten to Oxford and just moved in, and there was, his 18-year-old kid, and he's trying to basically restart his life over. So spring was a little bit of a struggle for him, and that stunted a little bit his development. Not necessarily a bad thing. He still has the ability to get anywhere he wants to go, but that stunted his development. And because of that, the fall season was called a little bit differently. That and having Zach Evans and Quinshawn in the backfield. Those two things left the Ole Miss fan base worrying about exactly what he could do. And we've talked about fans on this channel before, to where they just take a data point and they just stretch it out to infinity, and there's no getting better or getting worse. It just, okay, you're this, you're always going to be this. I call it the Tua situation, where people always talk about how bad of a quarterback Tua Tagovailoa is, even though the statistics do not warrant the hate that he gets. It's just a very weird thing. Well, Jaxson Dart was receiving that on a much lesser scale, even from myself, honestly. You try to be unbiased, you try to be real, but, you're going to let it sink in. You're going to try and logically figure out why something happened a certain way. Well, Jaxson Dart made the plays that he needed to make. And Michael Trigg is right there with him doing what he needs to do as well. This offense has a chance to be very special. Now, the competition heating up and us talking about that may not necessarily be Spencer Sanders, because the one thing that I hear over and over and over again from spring practice is how impressive Walker Howard is doing. Everybody I asked about it, Dalen named him the player of the day. So that is the competition that's heating up. It's the one that we didn't necessarily expect. We thought this was going to be a Jaxson Dart, Spencer Sanders joint. And Spencer Sanders can still get into this race, people. Don't think this is over, what's going on. But there's a little bit of a gulf developing right now. And we talk about this in the third segment. And that is, with how well Walker Howard and Jaxson Dart are playing, it makes Spencer Sanders being load managed at a minimum problematic for him if he wants to win the job. Now, if he doesn't win the job, there's all kinds of situations that you've heard all over the place about Spencer Sanders. But I think the ranking after the first open scrimmage of quarterbacks, the number one quarterback is Jaxson Dart. I honestly don't know if it's particularly close at this moment, but he is the number one quarterback right now. Number two, Walker Howard. I hear it over and over and over again. People in my DM saying, hey, this kid's for real. This kid has a pro-ready arm right now. And others are saying that he is the reincarnation of Matt Corral, which I've been saying for 3.5 months, but that's fun that they're playing catch up. So Spencer Sanders not being able to be at 100% is hurting him. And that is because, honestly, Jaxson is not repeating what he did last spring. Walker Howard came in here ready to go, and both of those players have special tools. Spencer Sanders is an elite running quarterback. He would be a great quarterback in the zone read game. He's a guy that can make some magician-like things happening from that position. But if you want to look at 5-tool type quarterbacks, you're looking at Jaxson Dart and Walker Howard. Those are the two ones that have the physical gifts that people would just be salivating over. But Spencer Sanders does have the experience. Remember, he is a 4-year starter, former Big 12 Freshman of the Year. It will not take him long once he's fully ready to go to make up ground. That's the reason I'm not going to write him off. I'm not going to end this right now. But it is something to keep an eye on. I think Ole Miss has a chance to be better, much better, because of the quarterback position, because of Walker Howard, because of Jaxson Dart. And if Spencer Sanders comes back and wins this job, that makes the quarterback room better as well, because we know how well they're playing. This isn't a situation that Spencer Sanders won the job because of an average to bad quarterback room. This will be a Spencer Sanders winning the job because he beat out two really good, really performing well quarterbacks. Whoever wins this job, Ole Miss is going to be better for it. And I think everybody should look forward to that. Anyway, today's episode is brought to you by Built Bar. The Built March Madness bracket is here. We know you have your favorite bar or puff, but now's your time to make it count. Go to builtmarchmadness.com to vote for your favorites. I'll be voting for the double chocolate bar. And if you want, UConn to win tonight, maybe you'll vote for that and that bar. I don't know. And when you're voting for your favorite bar or puff, you'll be entered for the drawing where 50 lucky Locked On listeners get a free box of Built. Not only that, but one Locked On fan will win a 12-month subscription to Built to have the best bars or puffs delivered monthly straight to their door. That's pretty cool. You've got to try Built. It's the best protein bar ever. Seriously. They're so amazing you won't even think they're good for you. What makes them so good, though? Well, for starters, they're all high in protein, low in sugar, and covered in 100% real chocolate. That's right, real chocolate. Run to BuiltMarchMadness.com right now to vote for your favorite bar or puff and pick up a box while you're there. You can vote every day in March. I realize that this is April 3rd, but I'm assuming this is on as long as March Madness is going. So this might be your last chance. So hop in and support your pick. Thanks again for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen every day. Make sure you check out our brand new podcast, Locked On College Basketball. Everything you need to know about college basketball in one place. Plus, you get to hear from big-name experts, insiders, coaches, and players. It's Locked On College Basketball. It's available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast. Also, join our subtext community. Go in there. I don't break news. That's not what we do. We're about perspectives and commentary on this show. But whenever we find stuff, people DM me all the time. Now, I've got sources all around the Locked On network, and people inside the school actually reach out from time to time as well. If I find that, I will put it in the subtext community. I will not put it out on Twitter. I'll just hint that something's going on Twitter. But if you want to know what it is, join the subtext community. Anyway, Chris Marshall's name is starting to appear over and over again. We talk in the third segment about him with John Gillespie. And Chris Marshall is a guy that made some plays and flashed a little bit against Alabama last year for the offensively deprived Texas A&M Aggies So it should be no surprise that he has the physical gifts to do it. He's a former, I think, 5-star player. I mean, he was right there on the 20th in the country line. So he has the talent to do it. And we talk in the third segment about how he reminds me of Laquan Treadwell, like a pre-injury Laquan, because he's so physical, he's so big, he's got such a wide catch radius. So we'll see exactly what he does. And with Trey Harris missing the open scrimmage, Chris Marshall had a chance to make a little bit of plays, make a few plays, to get himself noticed, to get ready for fall camp. And he is taking advantage of it from everything I'm hearing. Now, everybody is going to be concerned, at least a little bit, that Chris Marshall is, you're going to get your hopes up in the spring, and in the fall, it's going to be another Michael Trigg type situation. And I don't know if that's entirely the case. I think Michael Trigg, his head is on right at this moment. He's doing the stuff that he needs to do. He's realized he's got basically a year that if he balls out, he gets to make all this money. And Chris Marshall can see that as well. And lessons learned can go to Chris Marshall, because as talented as Chris Marshall is, there's going to be that question mark about him coming to Ole Miss until there isn't. So we'll see exactly what Chris is able to do, because he's making contested catches over the middle. He's competing on the outside, and he's blocking his butt off. And that, on the field, between the lines, is exactly what we were hoping he would do. I'm really, really excited about what's going on with Chris. I think he has a chance to stack practices on top of each other, and by the time fall gets here, he has a chance to be a number one option type player. I mean, he has those gifts. All he has to do is take advantage of it. All he has to do is do the work and the things that are required for greatness to happen. Once he gets into that routine, because 90% of doing this is getting into a routine. That's what people don't understand. When people try to quit smoking, it's because the routine gets jacked up. And they're trying to get back in the routine, and the craving goes back to cigarette, because that's something that is obviously a normal type thing for them. So it's important to create a new routine, and it's difficult to do that. But if Chris Marshall can do that to where he is getting into the habit of waking up at 5:30 in the morning and getting to the morning throw or the morning workouts, and that becomes a routine there, it becomes a structured environment, much like the military, which was amazing for me. When I was 18 to 23, I was an absolute tornado. Absolute tornado. Just a mess. I was a wreck. I think people over and over would complain about exactly what I was doing. That's just what it was. I ended up going to the military kind of because it was a last chance saloon for me. But I got there, and they had that structured environment, and everything was happening at a certain time every day, and I thrived under that. It's important to be in a routine. The stuff of day to day needs to be easy. The same thing that makes time fly and you go from 40 to 60 before you even blink, it's the same thing that makes going from 18 to 23 and growing as a man possible. It's absolutely nuts. I know all the talent in the world. Between him and Michael Trigg, there may not be two better pass catchers in the Southeastern Conference, talent-wise. The question is, will they put it together? Will the quarterback be able to make the plays that is required of them? They do stuff like that, this offense has a chance to be special. There's weapons all over the field, including a Walter Camp preseason All-American running back. Yeah, the Walter Camp All-American Award, the one that actually started it all. That was a big deal, Quinshawn getting that. And then you have Trey Harris, you have Chris Marshall, all the young guys. J.J. Henry's making plays in practice. You know, Brandon Buckhalter, Braylon Brown, Jeremiah Dillon, who is my low-key pick for a breakout this fall. Offensive line, get the ball out of your hand quicker, do what you're supposed to do. It's going to be okay. Nick Broker was good, wasn't that good to where Ole Miss is in trouble automatically that he is gone. So we'll see exactly what happens. Anyway, we're going to talk to John Gillespie from the Grove Report right after this. Stick around. Thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first and listen every day. We are, in fact, free and available wherever you get your podcast, including YouTube. Do us a favor. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Hit the bell for notifications. Comment down below. And, of course, upvote the video itself. And if you could, check out our subtext community to where whenever we have stuff, we'll just send it to you as well. I'm here with John Gillespie from the Grove Report. They had a lot of good stuff after the open scrimmage. We're going to talk to him all about that. How you doing, John?
I'm doing great. How are you doing today, Stephen?
Man, I am just absolutely peachy. Decent weekend. The wife's out of town, and I spent that by sleeping and taking naps and watching TV. That's what I've done this weekend. My wife is going to come back and put me to work, but that's what I'm doing now.
Yeah, well, that's the way to approach that kind of weekend. Absolutely.
Yes, absolutely. Anyway, John, you were at the open scrimmage, and yesterday we put out a video with Dalen Flowers, who was at the open scrimmage. So we like to get perspectives on this channel. It's not, everybody sees something a little bit differently. And his takeaway was how strong of an arm Walker Howard had. That's what jumped out to him. What was your main takeaway from the scrimmage?
I think, and I wrote this a little bit yesterday after the fact, you can tell that, at least from my perspective, that Dart right now is the front runner. And I think part of that is because he has grown some in this offensive system, grown some as a quarterback this offseason. That's also paired with Spencer Sanders not really being 100% healthy, and Walker Howard, still learning the offense along with Sanders. But I do think all three quarterbacks could bring something to the table. I think it should go without saying that this quarterback room is very talented. I think that's kind of been the general consensus for a while. But Dart definitely looked more comfortable yesterday than I remember him looking even at the end of the season last year, just working within the offense and stuff. And he made some really good off-balance throws that when he was feeling pressure was able to use his arm still and get the ball where it was supposed to go. And it was good. And Spencer Sanders' legs, I know his shoulder has been the issue, but his ability to move around, escape pressure, create plays that way was something I really noticed as well.
Yeah, and this is my take. I don't know if this is the case. I don't have a hotline to the coaching staff, but from everything I've heard right now, I would say Jaxson Dart is the consensus number one quarterback. Then it becomes interesting because my number 2 is Walker Howard. My number 3 right now is Spencer Sanders. And that's basically because a little bit of a gulf is developing between Spencer and his ability to get right. He threw 100% apparently at the open scrimmage, which he needed to do. But if this continues as well as Howard is playing, as well as Dart's playing, it's almost like there's no chance that Sanders can even get in this and make it a competition.
Yeah, and obviously those things can change as the spring and then fall camp wear on. But, I don't know that I would say it that strongly, but out of the three guys, I was impressed with Dart and Howard the most. Let me say that from a throwing ability perspective. And how much of that is Sanders still being rusty from his injury? How much of that is offense related? I don't know that. But to me, just yesterday, again, in a microcosm of one practice, those two were the most impressive to me.
Now, is Jaxson Dart so impressive and Walker Howard looking impressive because of the jumps they made or because of the weapons at their disposal? Because I do not remember an Ole Miss wide receiver core, an Ole Miss tight end core, a running back that is first team All-American Walter Camp preseason. There's weapons that are completely surrounding this quarterback position. That has to make it a little bit easier once you have a grasp of exactly what needs to be done.
Yeah, and I think that's definitely part of it. But I do think Dart also just looks physically better than he did a year ago. I think the jump from year 2 to year 3, I guess it's year 1 to 2 for him in the offense, but 2 to 3 in his actual career. That's always huge for the development of a quarterback, right? I mean, the 2 to 3 jump is always has the potential to be the biggest jump in a quarterback's career. And I'm not necessarily saying that Dart has done that, but he does look physically better than he did a year ago.
All right. And I asked this question to Dalen before. I'm going to ask you as well. Did you notice Jaxson Dart using the whole field? Or was there a little bit of the same stuff that was happening last year, holding the ball too long? What did you notice there?
To me, it looked like he was really efficient with getting the ball out of his hands. If anyone held the ball too long yesterday, I thought it was Spencer Sanders. Dart, again, and to the using the whole field question, I think that is also a yes, because there's one play in particular, and it's kind of hard for me to describe the way it actually played out because, we're not in a film room. But he kind of felt pressure. He moved up into his right in the pocket and threw kind of across his body to the left to Michael Trigg a little bit, which is mechanically not correct, but you have to do what you have to do when you feel pressure. And it was, for lack of a better term, it was a dart to Michael Trigg. And it was a beautiful play. And again, he wasn't sitting there keying on one guy, keying on his first read, that kind of thing. He was able to progress and use the whole field, at least from my perspective.
Well, you mentioned Michael Trigg, and a lot of people are saying Michael Trigg looks a little bit different. He looks a little bit more engaged. You read practice reports that are all around from the earlier practices, and his blocking, he seems to have a real focus on his blocking as well. Talk about what you've seen from Michael Trigg early on.
Well, it's funny that I had a conversation with a guy at the practice yesterday, and we talked about how Michael Trigg has all the talent in the world if his headspace will be right. And I don't know a better way to phrase that, but if he can be as focused as he needs to be, I think his talent is obviously off the charts. But speaking of blocking, there was an interesting set yesterday with where I saw some kind of like you said, his emphasis on blocking, and I thought, okay, that's a little bit different than a season ago. So yeah, and I think that I think this team still wants Trigg to have a key role in this offense, in this tight end room, and he's definitely got the tools to do it. But again, if he can make a jump from where he was last year, not just from a physical standpoint, but from a mental standpoint to now, yeah, I think the talent is definitely there.
Yeah, he's got the athletic ability to beat Brock Bowers, and I'm not joking around with that. But he just needs to decide to do it, and
right.
There's a level of commitment that he will have to make to get there. But he has that kind of athletic ability. Now, if we look at the wide receiver position, Trey Harris, I believe, is out. He did not play yesterday. But Chris Marshall is making some plays on the outside. Talk about Marshall a little bit.
Well, I know I didn't really expect any different there. Some people may have, but yeah, he was in the, again, it's kind of a mesh of ones and twos right now, a little bit with some of these reps. But the first snaps that were taken yesterday, yes, he was on the outside, and I thought he looked really good. Of course, I thought he was going to be really good when he came to Oxford anyway. But yeah, I think if you're talking about athletic ability and some of the plays that this guy's able to make, I think it's definitely there, right? I mean, that's especially a key addition right now after losing guys like Mingo and Heath to the draft. You had to kind of fill some of those voids. And I'm not necessarily saying he's going to be that right away, but I think that the potential to be pretty special is definitely there.
Yeah, and I'm about to throw out a comp to you. And this is not saying that person is this person right now, but he flashes that way. He's got the similar tool set. And that is Chris Marshall and Laquan Treadwell look remarkably similar on the football field.
I can see that. Yeah. And that's pre-injury Treadwell.
Yes.
But yes, I can definitely see that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't think we even noticed yet, and nobody noticed that because everybody tends to watch the football, but watch it Chris Marshall run block. That is what made me make the Laquan comparison when he flashed. If you go back there and look, he is an animal blocking down the field. I mean, he is special.
It's physicality, right? I mean, it's that level of receiver. It's there's finesse and all that kind of stuff that goes with the position, but for the Treadwell comparison, yes, the physicality is kind of the standout there.
Now, I know you didn't watch it, the defense that much during the game and during the open scrimmage. So I'm going to ask it about you just because it could. Pete Golding debuted. This is the first time a lot of us could lay eyes on the Ole Miss defense. What is an impression of it that you had?
Well, I thought it said a lot that there were, I think, the first 2 or 3 possessions. I can't remember exactly how many. The first one was a 3 and out. I will say that. The second, I think the offense got 1 first down and then had to punt. They don't actually punt, but I thought the defense was flying around really well. And again, we mentioned the tools that this offense has right now, the athletic ability and stuff, even as quarterback is being figured out. I thought the scheme looked really good just from the few times I was kind of paying closer attention to that than the offense, because I went in yesterday wanting to just see quarterbacks for the most part. But yeah, I thought that, especially with the tools and weapons that this offense currently has, the defense looks pretty good. And, I thought there was good energy from that side of the ball, really, really into it, almost like it was a real game kind of thing, which I thought, is pretty difficult to do for a random scrimmage in early April, kind of have that same level of energy. So that's, yeah, I think early returns on the defense have definitely been positive.
Yeah, I'll let you know. And one of the complaints I get on my channel is that I repeat myself too much, and that is because I have different people on the show that I need to tell what's going on. So I went back and I watched a lot of UTSA with Pete Golding. Not so much Alabama, because they're recruiting a different player at Alabama. But if you could see what he was doing at UTSA, he's going to be stepping up to an Ole Miss level. But you saw a defense that was crazy aggressive, that if they had weaknesses, it was with counterflow plays like reverses and things like that. But when you think about the job that this defense is going to have, at least in 2023, in 2024, you can start looking at the rankings, but in 2023, this is the role I think they're going to have, and that is their job is to steal possessions for this offense. Somehow get a sack on third down, get a turnover. If you can steal a possession with as explosive as this offense could be, there's a chance you could win a lot of football games. Now, from what you saw this weekend, does that jive with that just a little bit?
Yes, the aggressiveness, I used the word energy, but aggressiveness is probably a more apt description. I mean, just the level that I saw that some of these guys were at for April 1st was, I thought, pretty special, especially with a new system being implemented and all that kind of stuff. And yes, I think you're right that is probably going to be their job if the offensive weapons can stay healthy, get stops, but not just that. Again, get the ball back to the offense. And you do that a few times, especially with how difficult the schedule is, and that can make a difference in, 7 wins to 9 or however many,
All right, before we get out of here, I'll do the same thing I did with Dalen with you. I have different rules for the offense and the defense, but on the offense, only one of the players you name can be a quarterback. But I'm looking for 2 standouts from the scrimmage.
Okay, so I can name a quarterback.
Yes, just one.
Okay, Jaxson Dart. This is going to sound like a cop-out, but Quinshon Judkins, because he had a really special run where he still looks the same. I mean, he went through, hit the hole, broke a couple tackles, threw some guys off his back, and just kind of waltzed into the end zone. I mean, it was, yeah. So that sounds like a cop-out, but he was the second standout.
Jaxson, Quinshon should appear in these things, especially whenever I do these rules. So, yeah, that makes sense. Defensively, anybody stand out to you?
Off the top of my head, not exactly individually. It was more of the group. And again, there are some guys who were in non-contact type roles too, the black jersey deal. So I think as spring progresses further, I'll be keeping a closer eye on individuals on the defense a little bit more, because there were some guys I was looking for and couldn't find, and I wasn't sure if they were non-contact or just not out there or what exactly. So,
Yeah. And one thing I do, like I said, we want as many perspectives on this as possible because honestly, this isn't an insult towards anybody. And you know all these guys, but all the reporters talk and all the reporters can start kind of, hey, I saw this. Jaxson Dart looked good. And all of a sudden, it's like a game of telephone around. And no matter exactly what's going on, it becomes into like an echo chamber. And it's inadvertent. It's just because it's so small and where it is. So one of the things I want to do is like with you, with Dalen and stuff like that, is have a ton of perspectives out there that might not be from the reporter angle and everything. Because everybody's saying the same thing. That I don't think that tells the story. But this has been pretty fantastic, John. I hope that you can get back out to the next open scrimmage and the Grove Ball, and I'm looking forward to talking to you afterwards.
Yeah, with a little new addition to our family, hopefully my schedule will work. But I was able to get back up there yesterday, and it was I'm not gonna lie, it was a lot of fun. Football's year round in the South, and getting to see even something that watered down was fun.
Yeah, you know what? Whenever I saw you tweet that you were there, I'm serious. I was Arsenio Hall, fist just pounding. It's like, yes, we got more people there. The show next week is going to be fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anyway, thanks again for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. Make sure you check out our brand new podcast, Locked On College Basketball. It has everything you need to know about college basketball in one place. Plus, you can hear from big-name experts, insiders, coaches, and players. Locked On College Basketball, available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast. National championship tonight. Anyway, John, thank you so much, and I look forward to talking to you again next week, bud.
All right. Always a pleasure, Stephen. Thank you.
All right. Take care.